I am Bonnie Zindel, and author of Writing on the Moon. We're here tonight to celebrate the creative works of many people in the book who are here. Some people are here. So tonight is about imagination and originality, which comes directly from the creative unconscious. The creative unconscious is our holy grail. It's the wordless and mysterious place where our creativity originates. In this place, thunderbolts strike, and flying shadows lurk, and golden arrows soar. Beware, however, that the creative unconscious won't be told what to do or be demanded upon. When it speaks, you better be ready to translate the untranslatable into poems or stories or music or dance. Inside this magic cauldron lies the very beast of curiosity that holds us in its enchantment and its nightmares. That is what we're going to do tonight. Be inside the magic cauldron. It's an invitation. Now let me tell you how it all began. 15 years ago, a group got together at NIP and wanted to start a journal called Psychoanalytic Perspectives. I wanted to make a space in every issue for our creative expression, pages dedicated to stories and poetry. It was the first time a permanent space had been made for creativity in a psychoanalytic journal. And now the creative section has a permanent feature in it for 33 issues. I have done 33 issues. For each issue, I would select a theme that would spark the imagination. The first I sent out was poetry by people in analysis. And hundreds of submissions came in, and I knew I must be onto something with creativity and people wanting to express themselves. Through the years, I sent out calls on such topics as dreams as poetry, love calls, mothers of the Milky Way, strong women's voices, and capturing moments, and others. For me, it has been a birthplace because I feel so fortunate to have had this opportunity to collaborate with so many wonderful people. And it's amazing. I wish everybody was in this space. I've met so many great people. In all, we got over 1,200 submissions from as far away as South Africa, Australia, Israel, all over Europe, France, and also across the United States, all over the United States. 2/3 of the contributors are psychotherapists or in the helping profession, and 1/3 are made up of writers and poets and professors and filmmakers, musicians, cartoonists, and organic gardeners. Some of the contributors are here tonight, and so if they feel comfortable, would they please stand up for a moment and we could see them? Hi. Thank you. 2 years ago, I began thinking, all this great work is going to be lost. What should I do? I think I should prepare a book. And so I was fortunate that the editors at Karnak said they would publish it. And that's why we're here today to celebrate. Writing about our time and our space is writing about all times. It is like dipping your toes into the common pool of humanity. If you think about it, how do we know other civilizations? How do we know about the inner life of people from all ages? We know it through the arts. We know the Greeks through Sophocles in 406 BC. Now that's a long time ago. We know his Oedipus Rex and his other plays, and we know Shakespeare's Hamlet, who brings us right to the center of existential dilemma of one man, and he is all man. Because to be or not to be, that is the question, and it is a question for the ages. It is through the work of art that we know other times and other civilizations, and it is through our work that other people in the future will know us. So what we do is really important. So tonight, you will hear some of the authors writing who are in Writing on the Moon. They will read their works, and some people are not here, and they will be readers. Sometimes we're writers, sometimes we're readers, and we have to let one love the other. So we start tonight with the first call I ever sent out Poetry by People in Analysis. I hope you will enjoy the evening and let the magic cauldron begin. Thank you.
So this is a short poem by a 9-year-old terminating therapy by Anonymous. Therapy is good. Therapy is bad. Therapy is the best thing I ever had.
Hi. Yeah. Oh, I'm Rebecca. This is a poem by Octavio R. Gonzalez. It's called Rosie Guildenstern. She stood 5'4", red-brown hair, glasses, oblong shape, her nails blunt, simple. Her nose would wrinkle as she urged me to keep talking through snotty tissue. Once I had to wait in the narrow lobby where a brown-haired woman, faceless, standing blotted, soundless tears. The amazing vitality. How ever did you sponge so much from so many of us, pulling our heads from the sands of our own stories? There you sat, hands on lap, in a dark suit, pearls, never yawning.
This is a poem called Leaving Therapy by Arthur Tobias, and it's for Joan. All of a sudden, it's time. The work we had to do together is done. As the realization hits, fear and confusion rise, then settle. Clear memories of the struggle, this intimate, emotional relationship, how much your keen insight has meant to me, especially now in these last few sessions. Tears rise but do not break. Your eyes look wet to me. One hug and out the door. No more questions except this: how do we learn to say goodbye?
This is called Therapy by Susan Jasko. I hate it when you move the furniture and forget to change the calendar. For 3 months, it was November in Hawaii. I pay you to look startled at my life.
I'm David Brand, and this piece comes from the creative cauldron of Frederick Chopin, who wrote it in 1837 on the island of Mallorca, where he was hanging out with his girlfriend, whose proper name was Lucille Aurora Dulpen, otherwise known as George Sand.
I'm Jill Choder Goldman, and this is called A One-of-a-Kind Mother. Just the word mother is complicated in itself. Add relationships with mothers, well, that's a whole different story. I had a mother, and now I am a mother. And although it's a very different relationship, it's still complex and full of mistakes, albeit different from the ones my mother made. My mother was a character, a cigarette-smoking, poker-playing, outspoken, judgmental hard-ass, and a loving mother. There was nothing she wouldn't do for me. I was her everything, and I mean everything. She lived through me, and because I came out of her womb singing like Ethel Merman and tap dancing like Fred Astaire, she was in heaven. Here was her way out, or her way in, to show business and a glamorous life. Fortunately, I was a great candidate because I was born to entertain, so it was a perfect fit, at least for a while. Here's just one example of what my mother was willing to do. When I was about 12 years old, she took me along with my best friend Beverly to New York to see a Broadway show. By then, I had already done summer stock and performed in the Catskills, but not yet on Broadway. But while we were sitting in the first row of the mezzanine watching Bye Bye Birdie, I can remember poking my mom and whispering, "I want to be in that show, and I want to play that part." Well, I guess she heard me because as we were on our way back to Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh, my mother just happened to have an 8x10 glossy of me along with my resume, which she dropped off at the stage door of the Shubert Theater before heading home. Crazy, huh? Well, that was my mom. She wasn't quite Mama Rose, but she was a close second. Surprising to say, the stage manager of Bye Bye Birdie called my mother in Pittsburgh one night while I was doing my homework in the kitchen, asking if she would bring me to New York for an audition. They were casting for replacements for the show based on my picture. He thought I might be right. Well, of course, my mother said yes. No, let me tell you the truth. She practically yelled into the phone, "Of course we can! What time do you want us there?" So 3 days later, we got on a Greyhound bus for New York, stayed at the YWCA on 8th Avenue, and showed up at the Shubert Theater the next morning at 10 a.m. For the next day and a half, I went through hours of singing and dancing on the stage of the Shubert Theater, where eliminations were being made all day long, while my mother was waiting in the backstage area all day long, until they politely asked her to leave. Now, to her, in her defense, remember, I was only 12 years old. So when the day was over, I was left standing and told to come back the next morning for more of the same. My mother was beside herself, and I was pretty excited as well. That was the beginning of a very long career in the theater with my mother by my side. She loved the glamour, and she was there for the tears and rejections as well. She loved all of it, so much so that when I changed careers after having my own daughter, she was never the same. What happened to her little girl with all this talent going to waste, she thought. She couldn't understand that maybe I had changed, that maybe I had enough of the glamour and lights and applause. That was always kind of sad to me because it felt like her love was conditional based on my success in show business. I know she was proud of my new accomplishments, but to her, they just weren't as glamorous. She just couldn't applaud my search for knowledge, change, or for my desire to help others. As far as me becoming a psychoanalyst, she always referred to my patients as my customers.
The name of this story is Unbroken Chain. After over 50 years of treating patients, my father, a psychiatrist, took down his shingle. He picked a day to stop practicing, saw his last few patients, stepped out of his office, closed the door, and walked away. In the end, after thousands of 45-minute sessions of talking, listening, and helping, ironically, he said only, "It's time to stop." He was leaving behind a lifetime. He was not turning back, but neither was he turning his back. Not on a half-century of patients and their stories. Stories of sadness and of joy, of wishes and fears, misery and hope, suffering and triumph, bitter stories and sweet ones, stories of despair and fulfillment, of accommodation and rebellion, freedom and constraint, war stories and stories about making peace, angry stories, guilty stories, lonely stories, and love stories. But mostly stories about all the conflict and beauty in between, the stories of our lives. How does one walk away from the relationships with patients with whom one has spent years together at sea, straining, struggling, and delighting in intangible moments of connection that seem to hold much of the meaningfulness? How does one walk away from being immersed day after day, year after year in the winding and jagged paths, the various and sordid twists and turns of lives lived? And all the sorrow, satisfaction, envy, frustration, pride, shame, angst, gratification, regret, and pleasure that comes with. Most of all, how does one walk away from the sheer privilege of sitting down with another human being and together trying to untangle it all? We never know in this work when a patient walks through the door for the first time if this will be the one and only session we'll have together, or if it will mark the beginning of a relationship that will span a good chunk of a century. Will they be here and gone in a relative instant? Or will this person sitting with me today, a stranger, be a person I will come to know in some ways better than my own children, and with whom I will grow old together? One of the patients my father said goodbye to recently had been a patient of his continuously since 1965. When this patient walked in the door of my father's office for the first time, Lyndon Johnson was president. The U.S. troops were not yet on the ground in Vietnam. The patient at the time was in his 20s. He is now in his 70s, a grandfather. How did the patient walk away from my father, a patient with such bad anxiety that it approaches psychosis? He's often frightened and is delusional at times. For 47 years, he sought relief in my father. He trusted him. He was calmed by him. The patient told my father that what my father did for him was magic. Sometimes it helps to have magical thinking. How does one give up a decades-old office phone number, a phone number that traveled with my father to all of his many offices over the years, and a number that I have known since I was a child? And in the era before email and websites and texting, it was through that one phone number that a career's worth of patients reached my father. Originally on rotary phones, dialing it up in times of need, times of crisis, times of everything. It was through that number that my father put food on the table and, as patients like to say, sent his kids to college. And it was through that number that all of the relationships over all the years began. The phone number was, in many ways, a lifeline. So how does it all come to an end? How does the shingle dripping with history and still pulsing with life get put away? Not so easily, not so fast. As for the phone number, my father had the line installed in his home. He told me you never know when someone might want to call. It struck me that he was not installing the phone number at his home, but where he lived. He was staying connected to who he was, to others, to being alive. As for the patient, what would happen to him? Just as my father was reluctant to leave his patient, the patient, as one might imagine, was reluctant to leave him. As it turns out, my father transferred the care of his patient to me, and he would now become my patient. And just before the termination of their relationship, after all the years, my father offered him some final parting words of comfort to the patient who he had known the longest and with whom he had spent a lifetime. He said with a knowing smile, "Don't worry, my son has the magic too." The words were comforting to all three of us. Just a few months after closing his practice, my father passed away. The next generation of talking and listening will carry on. Going forward, there will be more winding and jagged paths, more twists and turns, and more stories to tell. All told, as we move further along an unbroken chain. We live within each other. Within each other, we live on. Thank you.
So I'm Nicole Cooley, and I just want to start by thanking Bonnie for including not only my work in the section of the book called Voices Out of New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina, but a poem by my dad and a poem by my brother. So this is sort of following in the spirit of Mark Singer's presentation. It's a family affair, and my brother and my dad can't be here. But I'm going to read part of what is a long poem in my book of poems, Breach, about Hurricane Katrina, and I'm from New Orleans, as is my family. A poem about Hurricane Katrina and the devastation of the Gulf Coast and my parents' decision to stay in New Orleans during the storm. So I'll just read a little excerpt. It's called Evacuation. The vanishing is supposed to unfold steadily, but instead it happens all at once. My mother says, "We are not leaving. This is our home." The morning of the hurricane, far from New Orleans, my daughter sits at the kitchen table with crayons. I'm drawing weather. The morning of the hurricane, the sky in New York is a glare of bright, bright blue, the 9/11 sky. The morning of the hurricane, in our last phone call, when I have given up yelling, begging, pleading with my parents to go, I tell my mother, "Take the photo albums and leave them on a high shelf in the safest closet. One for me, Alyssa, and Josh of our childhoods." To my father, I ask, "Do you have your poems?" 2. Supply list for my brother on the authorized day of reentry. A backpack if you have to walk to find them. Gas, full tank and safe closed containers to fill up. Water jugs, assume you will be in New Orleans for longer. Flashlights, matches, flare spray and spare tire. A good map of the city for back routes. You can't take I-10. Do you have a house key? 3. First, try to imagine what will be lost, but keep it romantic. Live oaks in City Park, Japanese plums along St. Charles, the Victorian mansion on the streetcar line where you were married. The oyster shells in the parking lot in the West End, how you kicked up crushed white dust with your sister. The rope swing at the edge of the river, at the levee where you hid with a high school boyfriend. Try to think rationally. There are agencies, FEMA, the Red Cross, the Louisiana State Police. All the phones are down. No landlines, no cell phones, no way, of course, to reach them. Log on for news. CNN.com stream the video. Watch the unanswered screams. Watch the rooftop rescues. Then try to imagine your parents safe together, a house sealed shut, a watertight world of two. I want the world to hush and stop and pay attention. Thank you.
I'm Emily Levin, and this is the Littlest Therapist. When I was a little girl, around 6 or 7, we had a neighbor who was a therapist and saw patients in her home. I was fascinated. I would race home from school, park my stool in front of the kitchen window, and stare at the patients walking in and out of her house. I wanted to know everything about what happened inside. I would observe the patients with wonder. What was wrong? What were they talking about? How did they get to my neighbor's house? Where did they work? Did they have a little girl? Did they like ice cream? I had a million questions. I would make up stories about the patients, but somehow the stories did not seem to help me figure out what happened inside my neighbor's home. I was dying to figure this out, so I decided I would become a therapist, and then I would know what happened. My room became my office. I set up my desk with my pink plastic phone on top and my bills and notepads inside. I dressed in my mother's heels, overalls and heels made for an interesting therapist uniform. I would put my dolls on my bed and they'd talk about their feelings. They would ask questions and I would give them answers. I spent hours in my office. One day, my father arrived home from work and knocked on my office door. "What's going on in here?" he wanted to know. "Your mother says you have been up here for hours." I walked to the door in my heels and overalls and announced, "Dad, I'm a therapist. If you want to talk, schedule an appointment." My phone began to ring off the hook. My father, my grandfather, my aunt, they all wanted to come in for some shrinking. My father set up an appointment with me and arrived the next day. He came right after work and did not even stop to take off his suit and tie. He was eager to get started. I instructed him to lie on my bed. There he was in his suit and tie, lying on my bed with my dolls and blankie. He was my patient on my analytic couch. I was so excited. My dad started, "Well, Dr. Levin, I have come to see you because I have this issue that has been on my mind, and I was hoping you could provide me with some answers." "Okay," I replied. He continued, "So I have this issue, Dr. Levin, and I don't know what to do. I have this little girl who sometimes does not like to clean her room. I'm not sure how to get her to clean it." "Dad," I screeched, "you're not supposed to talk about me. I'm the therapist." I guess at the time, I did not know how lucky I was that my first analytic patient was willing to talk about the transferential relationship and the real relationship at the same time and in the first session. "Dad, I can give you an answer that I really think will work." "Yes, Dr. Levin," my father exclaimed with great enthusiasm. "Please tell me. Just tell her to clean her room." "Okay, Dr. Levin, that is brilliant. I'm going to try it, and I will get back to you next week." I gave my father a bill, and we scheduled another appointment. My father paused at the door, and for a moment before leaving, I was a little nervous that he was going to ask me to clean my room. "Dr. Levin," he said. "Yes, Dad. You are a very good therapist, and you have a beautiful office." The door closed, and I sighed with relief. I guess therapists don't have to clean their rooms, I thought. This job would work for me. I braced myself for dinner that night. I knew my dad would ask me to clean my room. I thought to myself, I hope that we don't talk about this daughter at his session next week.
That was delightful. Hi, I'm Maggie Bloomfield, all the way from the East End of Long Island. I'm honored to be part of this beautiful book and this event. Thank you, Bonnie. This poem is to the voices in my head. I do not apologize to you. I do not apologize to you. I do not apologize to you. Nothing I could say could wipe away your indignation at my being me. What you see is not what you see, what you want me to be. If my eyes were brown instead of blue, it would not satisfy. You want me down, and I am up, 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 designed to overflow this cup of life, regardless of how many no's you hand me with supposed affection, focused on control. I have another role. Not daughter, friend, or wife, not slave to negative ambition. I have another mission: to move, to dance, to grow as tall as redwoods if I choose, despite your bullying childhood taunts, the labels that haunt the poorest nature of my past and future. The wild child you call slut, resenting the guts I have to navigate existence without resistance. It's your insistence I drum from my mind. Unwind the tapes of no, no, no. Refuse to ooze into the mold of old, old, old. I'm finishing your diminishing, dismissing your idealizing, your list of perfect features that sabotages God's perfect creatures. The message is the message. It's a mess about age. You clutter up my stage. I'm whiting out the page and covering it with rant. Don't tell me I can't transcend the ravages of growing old with the power of my rage. Your messages of no, of stop and end must go. I do not internalize, for I will be recognized. I do not apologize. I do not apologize. I do not apologize to you. Thank you.
Okay. So we wanted to play some music of Leonard Cohen tonight. As most of you probably know, Leonard Cohen unfortunately passed away on November 7th of this past year. It was the day before Election Day. Leonard Cohen wrote unique songs, and they always seem to me to have somewhat of an unparalleled depth and passion to them. And the old legendary sports writer for the Times, Red Smith once said about writing, he said, there's nothing to writing. You sit down at a typewriter, you open a vein, and you bleed. And I think Leonard Cohen did that about as well as anybody. To your beauty with a burning violin. Dance me through the panic till I'm gathered safely in. Lift me like an olive branch and be my homeward dove. But dance me to the end of love. Dance me to the end of love. Oh, let me see your beauty when the witnesses are gone. Let me feel you move like they do in Babylon. Show me slowly what I only know the limits of. But dance me to the end of love. Dance to the end of love. Dance me to the wedding now, and dance me on and on. Dance me very tenderly, and dance me very long. We're both of us beneath our love, we're both of us above. But dance me to the end of love. Dance me to the end of love. Dance me to the children who are asking to be born. Dance me through the curtains that our kisses have outworn. Raise a tent of shelter now, though every thread is torn. But dance me to the end of love. But dance me to the end of love. But la 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 Dance me to your beauty with a burning violin. Dance me through the panic till I'm gathered safely in. Touch me with your naked hand, or touch me with your glove. Ah, but dance me to the end of love. Ah, dance me to the end of love. Ah, dance me to the end of love.
Hi. Lissa and I are going to be reading fragments of correspondences by three brilliant authors, James Joyce, George Sand, and Marcel Proust, as they write uncensored letters home to their mothers. And we thank Julie Grenet from NIP, a psychoanalyst and French scholar, for her excellent new translations of these letters. James Joyce is the author of Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man and Ulysses, which is considered one of the greatest books in the English language. He advanced the use of stream of consciousness and interior monologue and set the course for a whole new kind of novel. This letter was written to his mother shortly after he moved to Paris, and he was unable to shake the poverty that always plagued him and his family. I know that he was one of 10 children, 2 of whom died. His family always had a hard time with money. His father was an alcoholic, and I think that's part of why he didn't live his life in Dublin, even though he always wrote about Dublin. In this letter, he speaks about his villainous hunger and the impoverished life of a writer. And a month after he sent this letter, he received a telegram from his father that said, "Mother dying, come home, father." This is Paris, March 20th, 1903, when he's age 21. Last month, I made up my second month's account, and I have reduced my expenses from 161 to 106 francs, hotel bill included. A reduction, that is, of 56 francs. My reduction of expenses, however, is accompanied by a lack of clean linen. I have had one handkerchief for 3 weeks, but I have a gray tie, which is something under a mile in length. It floats all over me, so that it is difficult for the world to discover the state of my shirt. One boot is beginning to go. I've taken to wearing my good black suit, as the other is impossible. As for the food I get, I do not always get food, only when I can. Sometimes I take one meal in the day by buying potatoes cooked and dry bread in the street. I do not know if I'm getting lean, but I can assure you I have the most villainous hunger. Today I came laughing and singing to myself down the Boulevard Saint-Michel without a care in the world because I felt I was going to have a dinner, my first dinner for 3 days. I sent in my review of Lady Gregory's book a week ago. I do not know if they put it in the Daily Express. The review was very severe. I'm sending 2 other reviews with this letter. Last Sunday, I went out to the woods of Clamart. I read every day at the Bibliothèque Nationale and every night at the Bibliothèque Sainte-Geneviève. I never go to the theater as I have no money. I have no money either to buy books. I have more than once upset a whole French cafe by laughing. An old woman shook her umbrella in my face one day. I was laughing so loudly. Come what may, I will lunch tomorrow. You will oblige me very much if you write to me and tell me what you think of me. I shall read your letter with great anxiety. Jim.
Hi, good evening. I'm Lissa Schaup. Amandine Lucille Aurore Dupin, best known by her pseudonym George Sand, was born in Paris in 1804. Her mother was a bird seller, and her father was the great-grandson of King Augustus II of Poland. One of the earliest feminists, she lived an independent life in Paris, taking on a man's name and dressing in men's clothing. Her male dress allowed her to socialize more freely in a man's world. She championed equality of the sexes. She and her husband lived apart much of the time, and she had other lovers, as we know from David, including Frédéric Chopin. She wrote an average of 2 books a year. Her novels were admired by writers like Balzac, Dostoevsky, and Henry James. And she was an important influence on the Brontes. In this letter to her mother, George Sand defends her unconventional choices and responds to her mother's harsh critique of her lifestyle. May 31st, 1831, age 27. You know me rather little, I dare say, my dear Mamma. It has been many years since we lived together, and often you forget that I am 27 years old, and that my character had to have undergone many changes since the time of my youth. In particular, you imagine that I have a love of pleasure, a need for amusement and distractions, that I am very far from having. It is not crowds, noise, shows, and jewels that I need. You alone erroneously think that of me. What I need is freedom. To be alone on the street and to say to myself, I will dine at 4 o'clock or at 7, if that is my fancy. I'll go to Tuileries via Luxembourg Gardens, if that is my whim. That is what would please me more than the vapidity of men and the stiltedness of salons. And when I encounter souls who don't understand me at all, who take my innocent fancies for hypocritical vices, I can't be bothered to try to dissuade them. My God, what zeal we have here in this world to mutually torment each other, to bitterly reproach each other for our flaws, to pitilessly condemn everything that is not cut to fit our mold. You have been told that I was wearing the pants. You've been told wrong. If you were to spend 24 hours here, you would see that this is not so. But on the other hand, I do not want a husband who wears my skirts. To each his own clothes, to each his freedom. I have flaws. My husband does too, and if I said to you that our marriage is the model marriage, that there has never been a cloud between us, you wouldn't believe it. As long as you show me that my presence is enjoyable and that I am dear to you, you will find me happy and grateful. If I find you surrounded by bitter criticisms, offensive suspicions, I will enjoy the support of my conscience and my freedom. You are too intelligent not to soon realize that I do not deserve all of this harshness. But you, dear little Mama, my children are doing well. Write to me, dear Mama. I kiss you with all my soul.
Proust's masterpiece, In Search of Lost Time, is considered one of the greatest novels of the 20th century. He broke with convention and changed the shape of the novel as we know it from a linear narration and plot to an intimate, subjective world. His parents had great hopes for him, but because of his poor health and the great amount of time he spent frequenting fashionable society, they worried that he would be a failure. Proust had an extremely close relationship with his mother, and he felt great pressure not to disappoint her. He was unable to tell her that he was homosexual. He clung to her, yet resented her intrusion into his life. She chided him for being nocturnal and wanted him on a normal schedule, but he did his best work at night. He was forever a baby. She called him my little wolf. In a famous line from his book, his grandmother offers him madeleines, which he dips into an infusion of tea. The sense memory of the taste and smells of the madeleine open up strong memories of his past. He could not grow up and write his masterpiece with all of its honesty and sexuality, all the complex feelings and lack of innocence until his mother was gone. This letter to his mother was written less than a month after his father's death. He wrote it in the early hours of the morning while his mother slept down the hall in another room. Many of the emotions expressed have the intensity of an analytic session. December 1903, age 32. My dear little mama, I am writing you this little note while I'm finding it impossible to sleep, to tell you that I'm thinking of you. How I would love and how ardently I wish to soon be able to get up at the same time as you, to have my coffee and milk by your side, to feel that the hours we sleep and the hours we are awake are distributed over the same span of time will be so charming to me. I had gone to bed at 1:30 with this aim, but after having had to get up again to take care of my needs, it was impossible for me to find my safety pin, which closes and tightens my bottoms. Suffice it to say that my night was kaput. I tried to find another one in your bathroom, etc., and succeeded at nothing but catching a bad cold during this ambling, bad as in jest. But safety pins, none. I went back to bed, but it was impossible to get any rest. All's well all the same. I am having a charming night, making plans to live as you like, and to live even more materially close to you by living at the same times, in the same rooms, at the same temperature, according to the same principles, with mutual approval, if satisfaction is, alas, now to be denied us. Forgive me for having left the desk of the smoking room in disorder. I was working so much up until the last minute. And as for the fancy envelope, it's the only one I have handy. Have Marie Antoine be quiet and leave the kitchen door, which carries her voice, closed. 1,000 tender kisses. Marcel, I feel I'm going to sleep very well now.
So I've been asked to read a love poem to you all by Bonnie and Rebecca, and I have it here in my hand. And they've chosen this poem to read to you. It's called Loving Elia, and it's by a man named John Pearson. And I will be accompanied by Karina Brown, who is a dance therapist and a body-mind psychotherapist. Oh, to lie in bed like a great boy squid, wrapping my arms around a beautiful girl squid like Elia. It's like filling the night sky with my face to the edges of the universe. It's like losing myself in cottonwood, dogwood, rainbows, peacock hats. Elia gives off a womanly heat that makes me forget about rude neighbors or the falling housing market. Oh, the kindness of small things. It fills me like blood, like some warm memory of warm things. I should like now to go upstairs and wake Elia with guitar music. I don't play the guitar. I would sing in Spanish about the beauty of roses and long ago death of a bird, a tiny yellow bird who died hopelessly against the mighty rocks, and oh, how sad that is. Oh, I would sing it in Spanish. But I don't speak Spanish. So the words would come to me as easy as sleep from my squid soul, the man squid that Elia has made of me. The song that Elia has made of me, because now I feel like a song. Whereas before, I was old shoes in a closet. I was pants over a chair. I was a man brushing his teeth alone in a mirror before bed. You know, once I wished to be famous, to be known. And now? Well, now I just wish to know Elia in smaller ways. I wish to know things as simple as watering a lawn. Or remembering to remove the used coffee filter from the coffee maker. That's what makes Elia happy. And yesterday I sat with Elia on the steps of our house and I held her hand. And it reminded me of all the times I've held her hand and the smallness of it. Seems almost infinite, the softness, the she-ness of it. How there is no word for she or no real word for the she that is her. And only her that is Elia and no one else ever. And how small her hand is compared to the big giant world. A shriek of pleasure ran through me. And it reminded me of how I've been alone for so many years, and how not alone now is bigger than any fear. And yet how small her hand is. Each night, I dance before Elia at the foot of our bed. In my underpants. Hiked up as high as they'll go. And I'm sort of bald, and chubby, and old, and ridiculous. But in my belly I feel a happiness too simple to name, an almost idiot's delight. As I bob and cavort like an oversized water bug. Every morning we kick our legs in the air and make up some random poem about cradlefish or pelicans or fat blue skies, so the day won't take itself too seriously. And every night for 18 months, we have kissed goodnight. She calls me Coconut Head, and I call her Raptor Girl. It is nice trying to find her beautiful mouth in the dark. Kissing Elia is a sacred, slow thing that grows as it gets smaller. On the other side of that mouth is a woman of such honesty, such generosity, such daring, such kindness. I kiss her and feel all barefoot and safe, as if I were floating in the soft, ferocious history of love, as if every woman I ever wanted and couldn't have, were in her mouth, that little cathedral of female, lady, woman, pretty roses, birds and bees, and life eternal, 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 eternal. Thank you.
I'm Jim Klein. I'm bipolar, and I have two poems here. The first is Metaballs. This is the first time I broke down, and it was the worst because I didn't know what was happening. It's addressed to my wife at the time. It's called Metaballs because I was trying to put the whole universe on something on my kitchen table. You watched me sitting up every night with tape and styrofoam balls. It was 6 or 7 Metaballs I woke you up with at 4:30 a.m., for example, knowing it was right because you loved me. And you were so shrewd. This is the recovery. And you were so shrewd watching me, listening to me, and little by little teaching me to stand still without rocking, to swing my arms naturally, to pitch my voice lower, to enunciate. And this is called Blue Ships on the Wallpaper. This is the first time I was in a straitjacket. I'm in my friend's car explaining a kind of literary physics only I know how to do. And this plainclothes individual with his eyes dilated somehow knocks on the car window. Can you help me? I'm losing it. See, what he did was he called on my best instincts to get me into the straitjacket, okay? But there's a mistake there. His eyes dilated somehow. They were not actually dilated, they were constricted. I just read Thinking Fast and Slow. When you think slow, your eyes constrict. And actually there are studies that can measure how hard you're thinking by how tiny you are. So I always admired this guy for being so clever. But when I read that, I realized how brave he was. Blue ships on the wallpaper. I'm in my friend's car explaining a kind of literary physics only I know how to do, and this plainclothes individual with his pupils constricted somehow knocks on the car window. Can you help me? I'm losing it. That's what he says to me. I see it's true, so I tell him, get in, take my place. Put your head down between your knees. And then at some point, he and I change places, and I'm in a straitjacket. Then a yellow ambulance. And not missing a beat, I'm praising them because it's not red, explaining how it should be decorated. A little boy's room, not a utility room. Blue ships on the wallpaper.
Okay, well, there's some beautiful things going on in this room tonight, I must say. That was, So, we're going to close out the night with a little mini set here of a few tunes. And we wanted to also honor Bob Dylan tonight. I guess for a couple of reasons. One is that, there's been a lot of protest in the air, and that always invokes Bob Dylan. And of course, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature just a few months ago. And the only thing I would say about, when you're getting up to cover Bob Dylan, that it's not an easy task, because, the guy is such an icon that you gotta be careful where you're walking, The guy is a singer that I know named Todd Snyder, who put that best. He said, covering Dylan songs, it's like going into somebody's house to try to steal something. And you get inside the house, you realize everything inside weighs like 4,000 pounds. So we're going to try some heavy lifting. And, it's this song. Guess what? Yeah, it's a song, it's a song about, like most Dylan tunes, I don't know what this song is about, but it seems to be about protesting and about growing up, and how neither of those processes are particularly linear. Crimson flames tied through my ears, rolling high in mighty traps. Pounce of fire on flaming roads, using ideas as my maps. We'll meet on edges soon, said I, proud neath heated brow. Oh, but I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. Well, half-racked prejudice, leap forth, tear down all hate I scream. Lies that life is black and white, from my skull I dream. Romantic facts of musketeers, foundation deep somehow. But I'm so much older than I'm younger than that now. Girls' faces form the forward path from phony jealousy to memorizing politics and ancient history. Flung down by corpse evangelist, unthought of though somehow. But I'm so much older than I'm younger than that now. And a self-ordained professor's tongue, too serious to fool, shouted out that liberty is just equality in school. Equality, I spoke the word as if a wedding vow. Oh, but I'm so much older than I'm younger than that now. Soldier's stance, I aim my hand at the mongrel dogs who teach, fearing not that I'd become my enemy in the instant that I preach. My pathway led by confusion boats, mutiny from stern to bow. Oh, but I'm so much older than I'm younger than that now. My guard stood hard while abstract threats too noble to neglect deceived me into thinking I had something to protect. Good and bad, I define these words quite clear, no doubt, somehow. But I was so much older than I'm younger than that now. I was so much older than I'm younger than that now. I was so much older than I'm younger than that now. As they say, something like that. All right. So I'm going to take a, well, let's see. I'm going to play another Dylan tune, and I would just introduce this one by saying if covering most Dylan songs is like stealing a 4,000-pound couch, this one is like stealing the whole fucking house. But it was written in 1963, this song, and I recently went back and looked at the lyrics a few weeks ago, and I thought, wow, these lyrics remain apt. The lyrics remain apt. Unfortunately, the lyrics remain apt. Let's get a little more on the guitar. How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? How many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? Yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they are forever banned. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many years can a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? How many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? Yes, and how many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? And how many ears must one man have before he can hear people cry? Yes, and how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna take a quick departure from Leonard Cohen and Bob Dylan because I just want to get this one tune in before we close it out with one more. But I'll just introduce this song by saying that this is the song that has been on my mind most since Election Day, and this is it. Put men and women together, see which one is smarter. Some say men, but I say no. The women are smarter, well I think so. It ain't me, it's the people they say. Men are leading the women astray. Well I say, it's the women today, smarter than the man in every way. Well that's right, the women are smarter, that's right, the women are smarter, that's right, the women are smarter, the women are smarter, that's right. Little boy sit on the corner and cry. Big man come and ask him why. He said, I can't do what the big boys do. The man sat down and he cried too. It ain't me, it's the people, they say. Men are leading the women astray. Well, I say it's the women today, smarter than the man in every way. Well, that's right, the women are smarter, that's right, the women are smarter, that's right, the women are smarter, the women are smarter, that's right. Hey now, hey, hey now, now, Aika, all day. Giacomo fina honane, Giacomo fina ne. I say, hey now, hey now, hey now, now, Aika, all day. Giacomo fina honane, Giacomo fina ne. They say men are leading the women astray. Well, I say it's the women today, smarter than the man in every way. Well, that's right, the women are smarter, that's right, the women are smarter, that's right, the women are smarter, the women are smarter, that's right. Well, that's right, the women are smarter, that's right, the women are smarter, that's right, the women are smarter, the women are smarter, that's right. Well, that's right, the women are smarter, that's right, the women are smarter, that's right, the women are smarter, the women are smarter, that's right, that's right. That's right. Well, that song was, I think, well, the guy that made it famous was Harry Belafonte. Yeah, I think King Radio wrote it, whoever he was. Okay, we're going to close out the evening with one more song, and a song by Leonard Cohen, which I think really needs no introduction. Say there was a secret chord David played to please the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof, her beauty and the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to her kitchen chair, she broke your throne and cut your hair, and from your lips she drew the hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Baby, I've been here before. I've seen these walls, I've walked this floor. I used to live alone before I knew you. I've seen your flag on the marble arch, and love is not a victory march. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Was it time you let me know what's really going on below? But now you never show that to me, do ya? But I remember when I moved in you, and the holy dove was moving too, and every breath we drew was hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Maybe there's a God above, but all I've ever learned from love was how to shoot somebody who outdrew you. It's not a cry you hear at night, it's not someone who's seen the light. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Thank you, everybody. Good night. Heather Ferguson, John Tendy, all the wonderful performers, and a big hand for Bonnie Zindel for making this night happen.
Thank you so much for coming. So emotional, isn't it? It's been a beautiful evening. Thank you so much to the musicians and to the contributors and the poets and storytellers. And thank you to a great audience, which has been wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. And I'd like to thank the committee who helped make this happen. I'm going to read it because Sasha Hare and Rebecca Posner, Lissa Sharp, Philip Gardner, and Sharon Leff. Hey, thanks to the great committee. And thanks to NIP for providing this space for us, and NIPA for providing the food. and to thank all of you so much. It's been such a moving night for me because, I've picked all these things and I never heard people read their poems and tell their stories, and suddenly it's embodied, and it's just, I can't tell you how absolutely moving it's been for me tonight. And to hear your beautiful music. Mark and David, thank you so much. I feel like crying. But see you next year. See you next year. Thank you.